So you're out driving and running an errand, and then suddenly you get stopped in traffic. And then suddenly rioters and protesters start surrounding your car and smashing out your windows. This video is going to give you solid information on how you can handle that situation while you are in fear for your life, right after the channel intro. First, I've been a cop for about 19 years now, so I've learned a thing or two about how the legal system will affect you, the innocent person who's just trying to lead their life and has been attacked by rioters and protesters. Hey, welcome to my bug out location. There's still a ton of work that I got to do here, but it will slowly and surely come along. And the one thing that we have to get out of the way really fast is that this video is not legal advice, as each state will have different self-defense laws, and it is your responsibility to know your state's self-defense laws. And another huge thing to consider is that even if you live in a conservative state that does have strong self-defense laws, you might still live in a liberal county. So if you do a legal and justified deadly use of force, then the liberal politicians in your liberal county may still try to twist those self-defense laws so that they can arrest you to appease any rioters or looters that's making noise in their area. And that is just another reason why I always suggest that people should belong to a legal self-defense association like the USCCA, an association that will pay your bond should you get arrested and provide you with expert self-defense attorneys that can argue for you in court at no cost. And again, I will put an affiliate link down in the description box of this video so you can check them out if you want to. And let's also get some more obvious points out of the way too. These protesters and rioters should know better than to protest or play in the street. And I think most of us can agree that every time one of these rioters or protesters get hit by a car that, well, most of us don't feel any sympathy for them. And then while you are in your car and you are driving around your city, you should be as legally armed as you legally can be. And I also highly suggest that you have medical equipment in your car in case you get injured. And then also don't forget to try to have the ability to record what's going on, because if you are violently attacked and you have to defend yourself, having video evidence of what happened could help you later in court. And then also just try to keep yourself out of these areas where protests and riots happen to begin with. If you're going on a long trip, go around those large cities. And then if you live in a city and you're driving and running errands within that city, then make notes where past protests and riots have happened, and then stay away from those potential hotspots. And then if you see even a hint of protesters, then make sure your car doors are locked. You don't want to be one of those people that we've seen in many other videos where they had unlocked car doors that allowed rioters to easily pull them out from their cars and harm them. And then whatever you do, don't get out of your car like you see this guy in this video doing. Besides putting yourself into more danger, it also helps if you can show legally that the rioters were completely the aggressors. If you make it so that they have to come into your car to get to you, then you are better protecting yourself legally. But when you get out of your car, then there can always be the accusation that you were confrontational, which could make it more difficult for you legally. And here's something else to really keep in mind is that most self-defense laws across the country, for states that actually have self-defense laws, most of the self-defense laws are pretty close to the same. Most of them are going to say that your fear that you had must be reasonable and that the amount of force that you used must be reasonable too. So to kind of use a simple example, let's say that you have a protester standing 20 feet in front of your car and they are standing still and they are holding a sign that says abolish the police and they're chanting, "We want free stuff." If that's all they are doing, and then you hit your gas pedal and you gun it and you run them over, then you will probably face charges because the courts will say that it was not reasonable for you to be in fear for your life, therefore it was not reasonable to use your car to run over that protester with. However, you take that same protester and you replace that sign now with a metal bar, and now that protester was no longer 20 feet away from your car, but now right next to you, and he has smashed out your window, and now he's trying to hit you with that metal bar. Now we have a whole different story here now. Now many courts across this state, or across this country, would say it would be reasonable then for that person to use deadly force, because it would be reasonable for that driver to be in fear for his life from that rioter with that metal bar attacking him. Now, unfortunately, across the United States, especially in the larger, more liberal cities, I am seeing local politicians like the local DAs or the prosecutors, where even if a good person uses a justified self-defense, use of force to defend themselves against a violent attacker, especially if they belong to those rioters or looters or one of those people, that many times the DA or the prosecutor in that area is still charging that innocent person that rightfully defended themselves, so that the local politicians are trying to placate the rioters and the people being destructive. And that is just another reason why I highly suggest that people belong to a legal self-defense association like the USCCA, like I say in so many of my videos, because a legal self-defense association like that will pay your bond should you get wrongfully arrested by a liberal DA, and if it goes to trial, whether it's criminal court or civil court, they will provide you with expert self-defense lawyers that will fight for your behalf in court at no cost. And then if you do live in an area where the local DA will prosecute good people that are honestly defending themselves, then that is just a good sign that you need to move out of that area and get out of that city before it implodes itself. And then always remember, your vehicle can be considered a deadly weapon, just the same as if you pointed a gun and pulled the trigger towards somebody. So if you do bump somebody or run over them, then the local courts in that area might consider your use of your car as using a deadly weapon. So if you do use your car as a weapon, then you have to make certain that it was reasonable for you to use a deadly weapon in that situation to protect yourself. So now in this video, I am not going to tell you what to do, but what I'm going to tell you is what I would do if I came across protesters blocking streets or rioters attacking cars. So the first thing is, obviously, I just stay away from areas like that so I don't get caught up in one of those things to begin with. But the reality is sometimes people just get caught by surprise. Sometimes people just get caught up in the middle of these unexpectedly. So if I were driving down the street and suddenly traffic came to a stop because of protesters were just simply blocking the street and holding signs, and that's all they were doing is just blocking the street and holding their signs and chanting something, then I would just relax and not freak out and just kind of let the situation take care of itself. If the police don't remove the protesters, then it'll be kind of like when a train breaks down blocking a major street. Cars will start backing up, cars will start finding the nearest alley or side street, and eventually the traffic will clear itself out. Now, however, if my vehicle actually started getting surrounded by protesters that were getting pretty rowdy, however, while they were getting rowdy, they still weren't trying to smash my windows or pull me out of my car, but getting rowdy enough that I started getting concerned for my safety, then at that point, if I could, I would go ahead and put it in drive and drive slow enough that it would kind of encourage people to get out of the way, kind of bump people out of the way, not run them over, but just kind of nudge them out of the way, going slow enough where people have enough time to get out of the way. And of course, once you start doing that, then you're going to have some protesters probably start punching at your car, hitting your car with their hand, maybe even jumping on top of your car and screaming at you. But I would go ahead, I would much rather suffer a few scratches and a few dents to my car and make it out of there before that situation got worse. And for the protesters that jump on top of your car, once you get so far away, they're gonna jump off because they don't wanna be separated from the rest of the group. They wanna be with their group. That's where they feel most safe at. So if you just keep going and don't stop, eventually they are going to get off of your car so they can make it back to their buddies. Now, I know a lot of people that say, hey, if I see protesters, I'm just going to plow right through them. But first of all, when you get stuck in these, you're not always the first car in the line. In video after video that we see, many cars that get attacked by these rioters and protesters, many times these cars are stuck. They have cars in front of them and they have cars behind them. And then second, we also have to remember is that using your car to plow through people is considered deadly use of force. So before you do that, you have to be able to articulate that your use of deadly force, using your car to run over people, would be seen as reasonable by a jury. So now let's kind of delve into situations where I might use deadly force to protect myself should I get caught in a situation where rioters and protesters are actually attacking vehicles and their drivers. The first thing I have to consider is, are the rioters and protesters doing actions that would allow me to articulate that it was reasonable for me to be in fear for my life or severe bodily injury? And are there any other mitigating factors, such as, is my young son in the car with me? Because I will tell you this, the courts highly way towards self-defense when there is a young child that gets caught up in the middle of that. And then, are the protesters actually just damaging my car, or are they actually smashing out my windows near me and trying to reach in and get a hold of me? And here's how this can get so tricky and why it's so important just to avoid these situations to begin with, because in most areas it is illegal to use deadly force just to protect your property. So if a protester is just purely smashing your car windows because he wants to damage your car, then in most areas it's going to be hard for you to justify shooting that protester or running him over. However, though, once he's like smashing out a window that's next to you and he's actually reaching in and trying to pull you out of the car, or he's trying to reach in with a metal bar or a knife or something like that, use a weapon against you, then in most areas you're going to run into, that's going to up it into you being able to use deadly force to protect yourself. And just on a really quick note, if you find yourself surrounded by protesters, pay especially close attention to protesters that have skateboards. They seem to be very fond of using those as weapons. So if I were in a vehicle that was being surrounded by protesters and they started busting my windows out, the first thing is I would already have my firearm out. Now, just to clarify, as soon as I started seeing rowdy protesters, I might not have my gun out right then and there, but I would at least have it ready to go at a moment's notice. And then once the protesters really started getting rowdy and started attacking cars or banging on cars or stuff like that, then I would at least have it out. I might not have it pointed at anybody yet, but I would at least have it out and ready to go. But once those protesters actually shattered my car windows next to me and actually started reaching into my car to pull me out, or trying to reach into my car to strike me with a weapon or something like that, then I would consider myself to be in fear for my life, and then I would definitely use deadly force to protect my life. If I had no cars blocking my way, then I would floor it. And if anybody was in front of me and got ran over, well, then that's what they would get for being part of that angry mob. And then if I was stuck in cars, then I would open fire on anybody that was trying to strike me with any kind of a deadly weapon or trying to pull me out of my car into the middle of that angry mob. And again, I am talking about what I would do that's in accordance with my state's laws. I am not telling you what you should do. And again, it is your responsibility to know your area self-defense law so that you can make a more informed decision should you ever find yourself in one of these situations. But once it has reached that point that I've had to open fire on people, then it is time for me to punch the gas and get out of there. Or if I'm stuck and I cannot get out of there with my vehicle, then it's time for me to consider fleeing on foot if I can do so. And then once I got out of that danger area and into a safe area, then as soon as I reasonably could do so, then I would call 911 to report what happened so I don't catch a hit and run charge or something like that. And then I would also call the USCCA to get that legal thing started. And again, I will put a link to the USCCA down in the description box below. And again, I will say it, if you live in an area where they will charge you, even if you reasonably protected yourself, again, that is a sign you need to move from there. And hey, I am also seeing more and more stories where rioters and protesters are actually shooting into cars that aren't stopping like they want. So that's just another reason for you to keep alert of what's going on around you, to keep out of those areas, and if you live in those areas, to move out. So please comment below, did I miss anything in this video? Then also please comment with, how would you react to protesters simply just blocking the street versus protesters that are actually attacking cars and its drivers? And to learn what happens to you legally and what the police will do to you after you've been forced to shoot somebody in self-defense, then click on the video that should be appearing on the screen just about now to learn that powerful knowledge. Anyways, folks, if you made it this far, hey, thank you very much for watching, and I pray that you have a good night.